mind just, so we have a situation where grocers are being presented with fuel surcharges from their suppliers, and I wondered, first of all, I guess that was inevitable that was going to happen, and now consumers are going to pay more for it.
That's right. I mean, we've seen the increase in gas prices, and that it has a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect on transportation costs, on farming, and ultimately the cost of food. So it is no surprise that we are seeing that surcharge, because it's not, of course, a small bump. It is significant. And I'm sure you have also seen now that the summer fuel blend has arrived, which means that the summer gas, and this happens every year, will be increasing by about 10 cents per liter. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that ultimately erases any savings that the suspension of the excise tax that the Prime Minister announced yesterday would have provided Canadians. We do, though, still have an opportunity to vote on the motion that we put forward, the Conservatives put forward, where we are proposing that all federal taxes are being removed. The 3 federal taxes are removed for the remainder of the year. And so if we are able to approve that plan, then there will actually be a relief for Canadians in the summer.
The other angle on this grocery store surcharge story is that some of the big chains, Loblaws, for example, Sobeys, are refusing to pay the surcharge to suppliers, and smaller and independent grocers are saying, if I say I'm not going to pay it, I'm not going to get groceries. So here we have also a bit of a market imbalance. The grocery monopolies are exercising some power, and I wonder if it might be appropriate for a federal government to prohibit that kind of practice.
Yeah, I mean, and we have advocated for more competition in the grocery sector as well, because ultimately, as you know, when there's more competition, then prices have to be disciplined. Those margins have to be disciplined, and oftentimes, as you mentioned, it is the smaller guys that don't have as much leverage to negotiate and to bypass any surcharge and essentially get bullied into paying additional taxes. But this is all driven by that increase in the cost of fuel that is being passed on. You know, there were some questions that were being raised whether or not the cost of fuel will ultimately impact the cost of food. But here it is. It is very clear that it does ultimately impact the cost of food.
Ms. Cobena, Chris Rand, CBC. Good to meet you finally. You've spoken many times about your family in general terms. Would you support social media restrictions or AI chatbot restrictions? The government's Mr. Miller says they're seriously looking at them. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the specifics of that, to be honest. I do have little kids. I most certainly would not approve of my my little 10-year-old boy being on social media, but I would have to look at the specifics of that. Yeah.
Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like in general, just because you're one of 343 MPs, and just I'm asking everybody today. So yeah.
Well, there's pros and cons to social media, but of course boundaries and restrictions are important. Those can be applied at home as well. But to be completely honest with you, I have to look at the specifics of the proposal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan.
Yeah, no problem.
Your question?
Yeah, do you think that the federal government should put age restrictions on social media and AI chatbots? There is a consideration that this might happen. They're looking at doing it.
I think that this is an important question that we need to look at in 2026 with chatbots, with all social media platforms. There's a responsibility for these corporations to make sure that they've got safeguards in place for children. Government obviously has an obligation to protect its citizens and to protect young people. We've seen the harms that exist. So there's several different pieces that I think need to be looked at. I think a committee study on this, where we could hear from experts instead of simply a proclamation from government or from people in industry about what they think it should look like, is the best way to proceed with it. The Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics has looked at this issue in the past, but this is a rapidly changing environment, particularly with AI. And we've seen more harms, and we've also seen some areas that are very clear where both industry and government can take a bigger role. And I also think that there's an education piece that needs to be included as well for the public, and some of that crosses, different jurisdictional lines. And so we do need a much larger conversation on this. And to simply say, should we have an age restriction? It leads to the next question. Well, what is that age? And we need to understand what it is that we're looking to accomplish, and what harms are we looking to prevent, and how best can we do that. So it's a very complex and layered question, but certainly we, both societally and as parliamentarians, need to look more deeply at this question.
We have seen other jurisdictions, though, do 16 years of age. That is something that you could kind of bring in pretty straightforwardly. So do you think that age restriction should be something that the government considers among those other things that you're talking about?
I think that when it comes to protecting young people from harms and from the risks that come with these social media platforms, with AI, I think that really everything should be on the table for consideration when it comes to children. Families, parents have a big role to play as well, and we need to make sure that we set them up for success and give them the tools to be able to guide, teach, and protect their children as well. And so it really is a larger question, but should age restrictions be considered? Absolutely.
Thanks for stopping.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Paul, when will you be getting this new money, and what are you going to be using it for?
Well, the money, I understand, started flowing March 26th at the Board of Internal Economy meeting on that day. So it accumulated from then, and of course with the new fiscal year, April 1, it's there, so the money is there now. We'll be using it to hire staff, for research, to support the caucus and parliamentary functions. So as I've argued for the last year, this is going to make Parliament function better, and I think help us bring an important voice to the House of Commons.
What sort of difference will this pot of money make for your party?
It'll be significant. It's about $670,000 per year, and that will enable us to hire some significant positions. As you know, Parliament is complex, it moves quickly, it changes, and our ability to participate meaningfully is important to the government, it's important to the functioning, and it'll allow us to hire some staff who will help us discharge that duty.
So you think mostly staff?
Mostly, yeah.
Is there a worry the money could dry up the standing order, say 6 MPs? We know Mr. Boulderis is potentially considering going to Quebec politics. What happens if he leaves?
My understanding from the Board of Internal Economy is that they set the money based on parties that elected 6 or more MPs at the beginning of this Parliament. This is an agreement only for this Parliament, and the amount of money is set at that time. We elected 7 MPs, so the money is based on that and will remain stable for the life of the Parliament.
And what can you tell us about the unanimous consent motion you're going to bring forward?
Well, you heard our new leader, Robbie Lewis, bring up the really important issue of predatory pricing, using algorithms and AI at the grocery store to rip off Canadians. And so this is a motion to have the government to act immediately to stop it.
And just told David Aiken I'd ask this for you. You're a Catholic, right?
Yes, I was baptized and raised a Catholic.
What do you make of the whole Pope versus Trump feud?
It seems very unseemly for any political leader to be attacking a major world religious leader who is simply calling for things like peace and calling for diplomacy and an end to violence. So it seems awfully offside and wrong for me to hear Mr. Trump criticize the Pope in that manner.
You mentioned that the NDP has been, fighting for a year to get some more resources. Do you have any idea as to why this change happened now?
No, I've been advocating very hard, as you know, since the last election, so it's been almost a year. I've been arguing consistently that, especially in a minority parliament, that having the parties able to function properly is good for Parliament, and it's important for the Canadian voters who sent us here. So I'd like to believe that argument penetrated at a certain point. But you'd have to ask the Board of Internal Economy. I mean, we don't sit there. It's the other parties who came to this decision, not us.
Are there any negotiations that you know at this point are ongoing about changing the standing orders, committee composition, and if so, is there any openness you get the sense from the government they might be willing to give the NDP some thoughts on?
I have no knowledge of any of those discussions, so I couldn't answer that question.
Do you think that the government should be looking to add age restrictions to social media sites or chatbots in order to protect younger Canadians?
I think the issue of young people and children having access to inappropriate things online is a very live issue, and I think every parent and family and community in the country is alive to that issue and worried about it. So that's one of the tools, I think, in the toolbox. I think what we do need is we need more effective action from the government to regulate in this space. I couldn't comment on that specific idea. I know some other countries are moving in that direction, so I think it's something Canada should look at.
What do you make of the fact that the Liberals have been talking about online harms for a number of years now, but they haven't been able to get the legislation across? Do you have any kind of confidence in the Carney government, now that it has a majority, that it will be able to take more steps towards something like regulation?
Well, they've got the votes to do it now, so they can't use the other parties as an excuse for not acting. What I would say is they have consistently put important issues like online harms into omnibus bills, which contain all sorts of other things that become problematic, and that then causes the legislation not to pass. So I think the lesson here, from my point of view, is the government should legislate in a very streamlined way, deal with each issue on its own, and so that we can have a discrete discussion and debate about a particular social issue and make progress on it, instead of trying to play politics by throwing it in a 900-page budget bill and then clouding the issue. So hopefully they'll deal with these important issues in a legislatively clean way and in a way that can actually get some of this stuff passed.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Well, in the House of Commons, the NDP just asked for unanimous consent by all the parties to have the federal government act immediately to ban predatory pricing, which is this algorithmic practice of retailers that is very present in the United States and we fear is coming to Canada. This is the practice where these companies are mining, without your knowledge, your online surfing, your presence, what you're looking for online, and then you can actually be standing in an aisle of a store while a digital price is changing as it mines your data to increase the price if it knows that you're desperate or if it knows that you're in particular need. And I was very disappointed that the Liberals in particular voted no to taking this action. So New Democrats are going to continue to press for real action on this. This is a deeply unfair, frankly invasive, and as Avi Lewis, our leader, said, creepy invasion of people's privacy. The example that Mr. Lewis used the other day, imagine a single mom with a child or an infant with a fever who's online searching for a thermometer, finds herself at a store an hour later, and the algorithm picks up this desperation and increases the price of a thermometer on her. It also leads to fears that are grounded in history. We know that in poor segments of the United States, that retailers often would increase prices, knowing that an impoverished population doesn't have options for grocery pricing. So this is a very exploitative and invasive practice, and I'm deeply disappointed that the Liberal government, who claims to care about the cost of living crisis facing Canadians, shut this very, very logical and necessary motion down right away.
Could you do anything about that? Is it in Canada?
We don't know, but we think it is. It certainly is in other countries like the United States, and yes, we can do something about it. AI and algorithmic practices are very much on people's minds, and we think it's important to act now, before it's well established in our country, to make it clear to retailers that the price that you see in a grocery store needs to be the price that everybody pays.
What's the federal mechanism? Consumer protection is a provincial responsibility.
Well, no, there's overlapping jurisdiction there. There's the Competition Tribunal and Act. We govern telecommunications federally, so I'm satisfied that there's lots of federal heads of jurisdiction that would allow the government to act. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.